Grayish afternoon here in Wesel, Germany at the Berlin Gate, and we want to try out those two here. We have the Huawei Pura 80 Ultra against the Xiaomi 17 Ultra, and like I promised, what I will focus here in this camera comparison is the telezoom, because the main and ultra wide angle are pretty much identical. 4K 30 here on the front-facing camera on both. What do you think? Which one is doing better here in comparison in terms of picture quality, in terms of light control, in terms of focusing? Because the Xiaomi can focus, has autofocus here, and the Huawei has also autofocus, which is quite cool. Let's move a little bit to see how well they are stabilizing this grayish kind of afternoon here, and which one you prefer in this case. Which one is working better? Xiaomi has the ability at 4K 30 frames per second that I'm recording here with to switch to the back-facing cameras that the Huawei sadly cannot do, at least not on its high flagship. The mid-ranges, they can do it. The Nova line has the ability to do so. Not sure why they are keeping it from the flagships. What do you think? So we have them side by side here with the 1-inch type sensor on both. Both feature 1-inch type, but the Huawei has the variable aperture that is wide open right now, maybe a bit close. So even in its dark conditions, it should provide you with nice clarity. The Xiaomi seems to be a bit brighter in overall videos in this scenario here, which is quite interesting. But which one is performing better in your opinion? Both are recording at 4K 30. Huawei can do up to 4K 60, but no 4K 120, no 8K, and this is what the Xiaomi can do here, which is quite cool. The only downside is that the sensor is quite a bit down there, so I have to move my hand quite out of the way. Hopefully it's not in the shot here. Anyway, 4K 30, we can switch between our lenses. Let's go to the ultra wide angle here on the Huawei, and we also want to do this on the Xiaomi. This is the ultra wide angle here. It should be a bit wider on the Huawei with 30mm maybe. Yeah, 30mm I think, and it's like 14mm on the Xiaomi. So slight change, slight difference only between those two. Which one is better for vlogging? Which one is better for stabilization? Is the ultra wide angle on both usable in its darker conditions? RYYB sensors on the Huawei should help with the low light capability also of the ultra wide angle. What do you think about this one here? And let's perform a little zoom test. So if we're going with the ultra wide angle, you can see the wider field of view on the Huawei immediately. Let's go to 2x. By the way, I'm using internal mics, so probably using the Huawei mic because it's the best when it comes to voice pickup. Now we can go to 3.7x, 3.2x here, and this is now roughly the same kind of field of view, which is performing better there. It looks a bit brighter on the Xiaomi, 4.3 on Xiaomi, and then we can go to 8.6 on the Huawei. You can go to 10x immediately. Go to 10x here as well, which we reach now. Which one is clearer here in your opinion? Which one is better? Let's go in to, what is it, 15x here, and let's go 15x here as well. So which one is performing better here? Let's go to maximum 30 here on Xiaomi, where we have only 20x on the Huawei. Maybe let's go back to the 20x on the Xiaomi as well. I will have shaky hands because it's cold here. So 20x on both. Which one is performing better here in your opinion? Let's go back to 1x on both. Which one has better zoom in and out animations? What do you think about both of them? Which one is handling this scene best here with the lights turned on already? Like I said, it's a grayish kind of darkish afternoon. This is what you get in winter days here in Germany. Pretty dark. No comparison to summer days that are still bright at this time. It's like, what is it, 6 o'clock in the afternoon. So which one is performing better in terms of stabilization here? We have sensor shift stabilization on the Huawei as far as I'm aware, on the main camera sensor, and there's OIS and EIS on the Xiaomi. Of course there's EIS on the Huawei as well. Which one is performing better in your opinion here? Write it down in the comments. Here the photos as promised a bit of a shorter kind of analysis. First we start off with the tele-macro capabilities. Huawei Pura 80 Ultra is clearly winning here. It can get closer. But this one is a crop in shot, 200mm, where this is just 89. You can see how much more details there are on the Huawei in comparison to the Xiaomi. So the Xiaomi is really losing there with the telemacro capabilities that is just not so good on it. You can see how far away I was from the actual little car. We take a look at the tele in terms of white balance. There's a huge difference, a bit more greenish, yellowish, warmish on the 17 Ultra, where it's way more cooler on the Pura 80 Ultra. Actually, the Pura 80 Ultra is capturing it maybe a little bit too cool, but it's definitely way too warm on the 17 Ultra for sure. So I'm leaning towards the Pura 80 Ultra in terms of color accuracy there. Leica Vibrant and the original mode from Huawei Pura, by the way, or XMAGE. We take a look at the detail levels here, 10x. I think there's a bit of a slight edge on the Xiaomi actually. You look at the data here. So we have a bit of structure in the building where here it's completely flat looking. I'm not sure if this is real data there or not that it's reproducing there. The rest looks almost identical as you see here. Not much of a difference there. Maybe here slightly an advantage over the Huawei, and this looks a little bit painted, where here it looks a bit more realistic, but also having some issues with like some noise that tries to reconstruct some kind of data there out of it. So yeah, slight edge towards the Xiaomi actually. Also here, look at this comparison to this. So in this case, yes, I'm giving a slight edge to the Xiaomi, where here on this shot, 10x versus 8x. 8x is the predefined zoom level that you can choose there. When we take a look at the detail levels here, it's basically identical, not much of a difference there. Again, this looks a bit more natural, while this looks a bit more painted. Again, the Huawei has a bit of an advantage because of like the closer focal length, so he can really read what's written here, where here is very hard to read. Like if you want to buy some panties, you can get free for the for paying only 2, and the same goes for the other things here. It's a bit more artificial, where here it's a bit more natural looking, but the detail levels I think pretty damn. Red Bull you can read here, where here it's barely readable there, especially on the side. And this one you can read. The Action 111 you can read as well. The corny one you can also read there. And the flowers here again, a bit more natural with a bit of blurriness there. Here almost identical there, what the Woolworth sign looks like. Not much of a difference between those two. Then we have a shot where I try to match the Pura 80 Ultra's 200mm with the 200mm that we have on the 17 Ultra here for this little bit of a kind of portrait shot. And we can see much warmer colors on the Pura 80 Ultra, much more realistic, where he is just trying on the 17 Ultra to make it white, the color there. You also see a bit of chromatic aberrations and a bit of softness all over the place that we don't have so much on the Pura. You can also see like this is more the correct color, even though it's a bit too yellow, too warm. This is just too white looking there, and this is the correct color here as well, where he is a bit overexposed in my opinion. In terms of detail levels, you can see the Huawei is also winning against the Xiaomi there, which is quite interesting. Also here the sweater, yeah, it has more sharpening for sure, and also a little bit more of the contrast levels, which is quite interesting. But here, look at this and this. Here I think this is just way overboard there with the processing there on the Pura, where this is way more natural looking on the Xiaomi, even though the rest looks a bit weird. So very hard to tell. Some things look a little bit too artificial on the Huawei, some things looks a bit overblown on the Xiaomi, probably almost identical between those two. Also here, look at this, compared with this, way over processed on the Huawei, more natural on the Xiaomi. And overall, probably both equal themselves out there with what they can do. It's just like this looks a bit more natural, like a true optical zoom, where this looks a little bit edited. We take a look at the ultra-wide angle. I'm not focusing too much on the ultra-wide angle. There's a small difference between the 30mm on the Pura 80 Ultra and the 40mm on the 17 Ultra. You can see the focal length is not the only difference. We have also white balance differences and slight, and especially in this nighttime or dim lit situation kind of shot, it's way brighter on the Pura 80 Ultra. ROIB sensor is helping, but not only that, you can see we have 24 megapixels or 25 megapixels. You have to zoom out one time in order to get it like straight up there between those two. And still, in terms of detail levels, I think the Pura 80 Ultra is slightly ahead of the 17 Ultra here. Also, when I go towards the sides, you can see both struggle a little bit, seeking themselves out. Then I think when it goes to the side here, you can see both struggle a little bit with the sharpness levels on the sides there. and here it's almost identical. So yeah, it's just that we have 1mm more wide angle on the Huawei in comparison to the Xiaomi. And again, I think here it's a bit white there's a bit warmer. So white balance things, well, here's the sign a little bit blurrier, where here it's a bit sharper there. Slight edge maybe towards what the Huawei is doing with the ultra wide angle, especially in low light situation. Let's take a look at the portrait shots. Quite fantastic, both 90mm versus 89mm, so 3.7x I think on the Pura 80 Ultra. It's also 3.7 or something like this, 3.9 maybe on the 17 Ultra. The 80 Ultra on the Pura 80 Ultra looks a little bit more artificial, as you see here. So here again, I think the new Portrait King is definitely the Xiaomi, way more natural, way better looking, where here you can see the recreation of eyebrows. It's not so too artificial, but the eyes, it's really artificially done there. And yeah, I don't like it. The cutout, both are doing a fine job, but you can see also how much sharpening is applied there on the Huawei in comparison to the Xiaomi. So in this case, yes, I would say it's just a bit too much, where here's more natural looking, but you be the judge there. Both set to f2.4, I think was the aperture here, the virtual one, and both do a good cutout for sure. Then we have 135mm, the maximum on the 17 Ultra, and the Pura 80 Ultra can actually go to up to 10x portrait shots, which is quite cool, at least on the Chinese version that I have here. f2.4 again on both, and here it's becoming more night and day differences. You see how artificial the Pura 80 Ultra looks like with its 135mm shot, and it's just like the eyes are being recreated, everything recreated, where this is way blurrier on the Xiaomi, but looking more natural there, without losing too much details, where I would say, like, look at this, it's just like horrendous looking on the Pura in comparison to the Xiaomi. So yes, you be the judge, but I'm pretty sure when you see them side by side like this, you probably don't see much of a difference. Maybe you notice a bit of overexposure here, on here not so much. But if you crop in, you have to crop in, then definitely take the Xiaomi, because it's just like looking a bit soft for sure, but way more natural than the Pura 80 Ultra. And then we have 35mm on both, or actually 36 on the Pura 80 Ultra. You have to estimate because there's no 35mm button there in portrait mode, so I had to go 1.5 times. Zoom actually should be 1.48 or something like this to get 35mm. And yeah, which one is working better here? Surprisingly here, I think for the main camera sensor, the sharpening is helping the Huawei a little bit, because it's very soft there on the Xiaomi. But again, this is looking now on the Huawei is, interestingly enough, not too over sharpened or over processed in my opinion. It's just looking too blurry on the Xiaomi in this case, in my opinion, in terms of like naturalness on both. Yeah, in this case I like, even though it's a bit red there, it's a bit yellow here, I like the Huawei a little bit better there. Also because here this background color is way more natural, where he's just too yellow and greenish, which is like completely wrong. So yeah, also in terms of colors, here it's white and not green, and here it's like more towards what I saw actually. So portraits, I think, is a win for the 17 Ultra in general, but the Pura 80 Ultra with its main camera sensor can definitely keep up. Let's take a look at more zoom range, because we want to check out which one has the advantage in terms of zoom range. Let's take a look at this here. This is 400 times zoom, actually 411 on the Huawei. It doesn't really matter. It is, I tried to make it, and here the Harman logo is really clearly readable on the Xiaomi. The high-res audio, wireless, readable here, where not readable here. Wow. And also the Stereo Pro looking much nicer. High-res, this is like the huge difference here with this one here. So this is definitely a win for the Xiaomi. Then when it comes to telemacro, I showed it as before, but I wanted to show you again. Xiaomi, Huawei, you can even see this is like, the Huawei is really genius. It's not as genius as the 70 Ultra, that was like almost a microscope, but it is in comparison a huge difference in terms of macro photography and capabilities there. It's like it's digital zoom on both 10x, but it's so much nicer there on the Huawei for sure. So yes, the macros is definitely go to the Huawei there. Portraits, I think I would go with the 17 Ultra, and long range zoom actually with AI, because both have AI enabled, I think is also going to the 17 Ultra, Xiaomi 17 Ultra. It's quite interesting. So all over the place, 17 Ultra from Xiaomi is beating the Huawei Pura 80 Ultra, and this will be interesting for my ranking. Ranking and conclusion TLDR, the Huawei Pura 80 Ultra gets 4.723 points, where the Xiaomi 17 Ultra gets 4.711 points. So it's a very, very hot race between those two. But we have a slight win here on the Huawei's side. Let's dig into the details to check out where are the big differences. So first of all, main camera photo quality, basically identical between those two. Both feature low-fix sensors. The Huawei just has an advantage of the variable aperture. This is, however, something that it's only very in niche situations, or if you want to have creativity with your photography, you have the ability to use the variable aperture. That is quite cool. And I really hope for the 18 Ultra that Xiaomi will return this variable aperture, because it can be quite handy. When it comes to the ultra-wide angle, both are basically identical. Yes, you get a wider field of the Pura 80 Ultra, but the results are almost identical, and the huge difference is not really visible between 13 and 14 mm. When it comes to the zoom and portrait photo quality, however, it's like neck to neck between those two here, where I think Huawei sometimes has an edge in certain scenarios, like with overexposure issues that we see on the 17 Ultra with closer zoom out shots, like 89, 90 mm, something like this. But when it comes to long-range zoom shots, I think the Xiaomi 17 Ultra gains more quality and keeps more quality in. More detail levels that are visible there at 10x, but also beyond 10x. 400 mm, which is roughly 17x, something like this, 18x. We have a little bit more details there on the 17 Ultra for sure. And in this little dimlit situation shot that I did indoors, where I was photographing the headphones from Xiaomi, it was clearly visible that the Xiaomi 17 Ultra is overtaking the Huawei Pura 80 Ultra's very fantastic score, almost perfect score of 4.98. And the 17 Ultra is topping it, so it's like closer to almost perfect than the Pura 80 Ultra was, especially with the portrait photography. That is so natural, it's so cool, it's really good. It finds the right balance between detail levels, sharpness, without over sharpening. I like this very, very much on the 17 Ultra there. And it is topping the Huawei Pura 80 Ultra for sure. When it comes to video recording quality, I had to give 0.05 points down on the 17 Ultra. You saw that the 17 Ultra on the front-facing camera has a little bit better kind of HDR, that is definitely there. Pura 80 Ultra, however, struggles the same as the 17 Ultra with a little bit in dimlit situations, with a little bit of light dancing effects. That's definitely an issue. Where it's way better on the main camera with sensor shift stabilization, the Huawei Pura 80 Ultra doesn't struggle at all. The ultra-wide angle of the Pura 80 Ultra, also in dimlit situations, is working much nicer than the 17 Ultra, that simply cannot compete. The RYYB sensor there, or sensors on the Pura 80 Ultra, are really working nice and wonders when it comes to night photography, and this is also possible or visible, especially with night videography, where the Pura 80 Ultra is just simply beating the 17 Ultra. But it's not by a huge margin. When you take a main camera sensor, you almost don't notice the difference when I was filming myself as a kind of vlogging style there. But yeah, with everything else, you see that the Pura 80 Ultra has slightly better stabilization and a better nice telezoom especially. This is one that shocked me the most, where the 17 Ultra is very good for photography with the telezoom, and even beating the Pura 80 Ultra, it doesn't have a chance when it comes to the videography and then checking them out. Also, white balances is slightly better on the Pura 80 Ultra. Sometimes a bit of going over the top with the bluish kind of cast that we had at this grayish kind of day, but way closer than the way too warm kind of 17 Ultra. And you saw it also in the videos. My face was always warm yellow, which is maybe nice to look, but it's not reflecting reality so much. And I think Pura 80 Ultra is winning in this regard as well. Autofocus performance in both is fantastic. Great, 4.5 points. Front-facing camera is a slight win for the Pura 80 Ultra. We have more flexibility with ultra-wide angle, 1x and even 2x. autofocus. Both feature those autofocus performance, and I think the 17 Ultra has a slight edge there with HDR, but in general the shots are a bit crisper without being over the top processed looking on the Pura 80 Ultra, where the 17 Ultra, especially in dim lit situations, can fall apart quite quickly and turn into pixel softness that is where you can clearly see, if you have them side by side, that you would pick the Pura 80 Ultra for sure. Camera UI wise, however, is a win for the 17 Ultra. I can just simply, for example, turn on with one hand timer for my portrait shots, and on the Pura 80 Ultra I still cannot do this. I can go with one hand into settings and then scroll down and could do this as well, but why is it still hiding in the settings and is not as a quick toggle available, especially for portraits? Just if you don't want to make it available for the rest of the photo modes, just make it available as a quick toggle in portraits. That would be cool. Otherwise, in terms of extra features, both feature log video recording, which is quite nice. Both have tons of nice modes and features that you can use. Telemacro, super macro mode, for example. Nighttime video recording, as well as some other cool features in a pro mode, or the possibility to change your color profile the way you like on the Pura 80 Ultra. I'm talking about the Chinese edition, by the way, with Harmony is Next, or Harmony is 5 in this case, or 6 actually, that I'm using here on my device. And yeah, the Xiaomi 17 Ultra has a nice portrait, not only portrait but photo styles that you can select and save, like the aperture. You can save the white balance and so on. You can save it as a style or as a profile, and you can always switch to the profile. This is like the profiles on a real camera, which is quite nice. Yeah, and you can granularly tweak the settings to say which kind of settings you want to preserve on the Xiaomi 17 Ultra. So it will, yeah, keep those settings from the last time you turned off the camera or such things, which is quite helpful and useful, because otherwise, like, your colors might jump always back to the default, which is like something that was super annoying in another test that I did, and where I learned to like the possibility to set it as default. Huawei doesn't have this flexibility, but it has sane defaults. So if I change the color profile, it is changed. Also, when I close the camera and start it again, it is starting up with the color profile. So certain settings are preserved, other settings are not preserved. Like, what was it? Certain settings are preserved sometimes, which I don't like to be preserved, like the timer setting, especially as it's not directly visible and you have to go through the settings to change it. But yeah, nevertheless, I think the settings are, in terms of extra features, on par. Let's check out where they end up in the ranking. It's quite close between those two, as you saw from the points. And the 17 Ultra is, I think, climbing a little bit there. On the third rank now in my ranking system, you can see it is overtaking the Find X8 Ultra there, where, yeah, it is climbing definitely with the zoom and portrait photo quality. Before, I think I had it on the same par with the Find X8 Ultra, but here I really have to give it more points. It was already beating the Find X8 Ultra in terms of portraits, but now in terms of long zoom ranges, it was also better than the Find X8 Ultra, and now it is definitely proven it is even better than the Pura 80 Ultra that was before the king in terms of like longer zoom ranges. When it comes to the selfie cam, front-facing camera is something that Xiaomi still can improve there, I would say. Camera UI-wise, of course, they can also add more features, especially the ones that Vivo features. And I think as I'm so well there into the Xiaomi 17 Ultra, and the 17 Ultra is on rank 3 right now, I have to let it run against the best, the Vivo X200 Ultra, to see if it has any chance to kill that one. I doubt it very much. You can see the ultra wide angle is already beating everything there, and it won't. But it would be interesting to see again. This is why I did the comparison on the Pura 80 Ultra, more focused on the telezoom, to focus also on the telezoom and see if this really is, especially with the X200 Ultra now original 6 and tons of updates in, really beating the 17 Ultra can beat the 200 Ultra or not. And video recording quality will be also interesting to see, especially after the Vivo got so many updates there. And the rest pretty much will not change, I guess. But yeah, we'll have to see in one of my next videos. That's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. And you can write down in the comment section what you think about the like shorter kind of video, because some people were complaining, 1 hour videos, I don't want to watch it. Make it shorter, make it shorter, make it shorter. Yeah, little orange mans. I'm doing it. So what do you think? Down in the comments. Bye.